Fiancée insists on saying goodbye to her ex before our wedding. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I need to see Ryan one last time before I marry you, Elise said, standing there with my grandmother's veil in her hands like she wasn't casually setting our wedding on fire. We were 48 hours out. The seating chart was done, the welcome bags were lined up by the front door, my suit was hanging in the closet, and both our families were already posting countdown photos like nothing in the world could touch us. I was 31, boring in all the ways I used to be proud of: steady job, steady habits, steady love. I worked as a guidance counselor at a public high school outside Columbus. I spent my days talking panicked teenagers through breakups, bad grades, pregnancy scares, and the kind of home lives they were embarrassed to name. I believed in calm. I believed in saying the hard thing before it turned poisonous. I also believed I knew the woman I was about to marry. Elise and I had been together 3 years. She was the first person who ever made commitment feel like oxygen instead of a trap. She was brilliant, funny in that dry way that hit half a beat late, and good at reading a room. Which is why the way she said it bothered me more than the words themselves. She wasn't asking. She wasn't even apologizing. She was bracing. I laughed at first because I thought she was joking. Your ex? She tightened her grip on the veil. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound dirty before I explain. There are moments where your body understands danger before your mind catches up. My chest went cold. The apartment, which had been loud all week with vendors, FaceTimes, and her cousins screaming over centerpiece photos, suddenly felt vacuum-sealed. Then explain, I said. She took a breath. I need to say goodbye properly. I don't want to walk into our marriage with anything unfinished. The scary part was that she said our marriage like she still thought this sentence belonged inside one. Outside, a delivery guy buzzed with the rehearsal dinner place cards. My phone lit up with a text from my sister Nora asking if we still needed ice for the hotel coolers. Real life kept moving, but something had shifted so hard in that kitchen I could almost hear it crack. Then Elise said the one thing that made leaving impossible and trusting her worse. If you had asked me the week before whether Elise was the kind of woman who still carried a torch for an ex, I would have said absolutely not, and not because I was blind. Because I had reasons. We didn't build our relationship on adrenaline. We built it on repetition. Sunday coffee from the place that over-roasted everything. Thursday grocery runs where she judged my cereal choices like a prosecutor. Quiet nights on our thrift store couch with one of her feet under my leg because she was always cold. When my dad had his second stroke, Elise sat on a hospital chair for 9 hours and never once made it about herself. When her mother relapsed and disappeared for 3 days, I drove with her to every motel off I-71 until we found her alive. We knew what each other looked like under stress: broke, tired, furious, grieving. She told me about Ryan early, but not dramatically. Just enough that I understood he was part of a chapter she never romanticized. They dated almost 5 years, serious enough that people assumed marriage. Bad enough at the end that she moved apartments in a single weekend and changed pharmacies so he wouldn't accidentally know where she was. Was he awful? I'd asked once. She had stared into her wine for a second too long. No, that was the problem. At the time I thought that meant they were one of those couples who simply ran out of future. Sad, mature, manageable. She never checked his socials in front of me. Never brought him up in fights. Never turned old memories into comparisons. The only time Ryan's name ever landed hard was 6 months into our engagement, when we were painting the second bedroom. I joked that we should leave one wall yellow in case it became a nursery someday. Elise stopped rolling paint and just looked at the tray in silence. I asked, too cheesy. She forced a smile. No, just, let's not talk about kid stuff like it's guaranteed. I thought she meant life was uncertain. So I kissed her forehead, changed the subject, and told myself that respecting someone's pain was the same as knowing it. Only later did I understand what her silence had been protecting. Elise set the veil down like it was something fragile she didn't deserve to be holding, then leaned both palms on the counter. It's not what you think, she said. I hate that sentence. Nobody says it before good news. Then give me a version I can survive, I said. She exhaled, already irritated that I wasn't performing calm in the exact shape she needed. Ryan texted me last week. He heard from someone that we're getting married. He asked if we could talk before the wedding. And you said yes. I said maybe. Then I said no. Then I kept thinking about it. That landed harder than I expected. Not because she'd answered him, because she'd been carrying the question around alone while helping me choose napkin colors. Why? Because there are things I never cleaned up emotionally, she said. And I don't want to bring ghosts into our marriage. I stared at her. You think coffee with your ex 48 hours before our ceremony is the respectful option here? Don't make it sound insane. Elise, it is insane. Her eyes flashed. No, what's insane is pretending adults don't have history. I'm not asking to run away with him. I laughed once. That is a low bar. Underneath her hurt, there was something else. Urgency. Not romantic urgency. Administrative urgency. Like she was trying to finish a task before a deadline. I thought telling you was the honest thing, she said quietly. It would have been more honest to tell me when he contacted you. She folded her arms. I knew you'd react like this. That sentence almost made me lose my mind. You mean like a man whose fiancée wants pre-wedding closure with another guy? She looked away toward the stacked welcome bags by the door. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for trust. Up until then, I thought this was a horrible request. The moment she said permission, I realized she'd already decided. My reaction was just whether she had a stand-in. I asked, have you spoken to him recently before last week? No. She answered too fast. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then turned it face down so quickly it looked practiced. Who's that? I asked. Marcus. Venue stuff. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Then she gave me an answer polished enough to make my skin crawl. Her explanation was simple enough to sound reasonable if you didn't look at it too long. Ryan, she said, had lost his mother in January. Grief had made him reflective. He had reached out because he didn't want old damage hanging in the air forever. Elise said she wanted the same thing. One coffee. Public place. 30 minutes. No secrets. The problem with lies is not always the content. Sometimes it's the choreography. That night we drove to her final dress, fitting in silence broken only by turn signals and my GPS. She kept her phone in her lap the whole time, screen angled toward her thigh. At a red light, a preview flashed bright enough for me to catch 3 words before she swiped it away. Move to Friday, 11:30. Marcus? I asked. She didn't miss a beat. Yes. Vendor's schedule changed. At the boutique, she disappeared twice to take calls in the hallway. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled with only half her face and said, welcome to wedding week. On the way home, I tried again. When was the last time you talked to Ryan before this? She tucked a loose pin from her hair behind her ear. I told you. Not since he texted. That's not what I asked. She stared out the window. Winter, maybe. I don't remember. Winter. 5 hours earlier it had been no. At home, Nora was waiting by our building with 2 bags of ice, and the look she always got when she knew I was one sentence away from lying. She took one look at my face, then at Elise's, and said, I'm either interrupting a fight or an affair. Elise forced a laugh. Definitely the first one. I gave Nora the clean version after Elise went upstairs. Nora listened without interrupting. Then she asked, does she want closure, or does she want access? I hated the question because I already understood it. Later that night, after Elise fell asleep with her back to me, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She grabbed it so fast it was almost violent, typed something in the dark, and whispered, I know. I lay there pretending to be asleep until she left for a vendor emergency the next morning. At 11:37, our credit card app showed a charge from the hotel lobby cafe. By the time Elise got back from her vendor emergency, I had spent 2 hours arguing with myself in circles. Maybe the hotel cafe charge meant exactly what she said it meant. Maybe Marcus really had needed her. Maybe I was one of those men who hears X and turns feral. I didn't want to become suspicious before my wedding, so I tried the adult version. She came in carrying a garment bag and a paper cup she hadn't finished. I was at the kitchen table stuffing place cards into envelopes because if my hands stopped moving, my brain got loud. How'd it go? I asked. She set the bag down carefully. Fine. At the hotel cafe? That made her freeze for half a second. Marcus needed to go over table changes. Weird, I said, because the only table changes were done yesterday. Her whole body tightened. Did you seriously track my card charges? It's our shared card. It's also not normal that I have to verify whether my fiancée is telling me the truth about meeting her ex. She looked at me like I had crossed some moral line. I knew this would happen. This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping the floor. No, don't do that. Don't turn your secrecy into my failure. She put the cup down hard enough to splash coffee on the counter. You're making something innocent ugly. Then stop hiding it. I'm not hiding anything. You met him today. She didn't answer. You met him today? I repeated. Finally, she said, for 20 minutes. The honesty should have helped. Instead, it felt like getting handed the smallest possible piece of truth and being expected to thank her. What did you talk about? It was private. I actually laughed. Private? With your ex? 46 hours before our wedding? Her voice dropped. You do not own every painful thing that ever happened to me just because you're marrying me. That line hit because part of it was fair. Part of it was cruel. I'm not asking to own it, I said. I'm asking not to be ambushed by it. She looked exhausted. I love you, Daniel. Then why do I feel like the only person here who doesn't know what's happening? For a second, I thought she was about to tell me everything. Then her phone lit up again, and the name on screen was not Marcus. The name on screen was Lakeside Center. Not Ryan. Not Marcus. Somehow worse. Elise saw my eyes catch it and snatched up the phone. It's nothing. Then answer it. No. We stood there staring at each other while the phone vibrated itself quiet in her hand. Then she turned and walked into the bedroom, shutting the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was imagining her cheating. By then my fear had shifted. Cheating was simple. This felt layered. Planned. Attached to something Elise believed I could not handle. The next morning she left early for her manicure. Around 10, I started printing the updated ceremony timeline because Marcus liked hard copies. Our printer was old and possessed, so I always checked the queue on her laptop before sending anything. When I opened it, a PDF was still sitting there from the night before. Lakeside Reproductive Center. Annual cryostorage invoice. Patient names, Elise Hart / Ryan Mercer. Balance due, $1,840. Payment due date, June 14th. Our wedding was June 13th. For maybe 5 full seconds, my brain refused to translate the words. Cryostorage could mean a lot of things if I was desperate enough. But the word reproductive sat there like a match held to gasoline. I opened the PDF. The second page listed specimen type. Embryos. 4. Stored 2021. I had to sit down because the room tipped. Elise had never told me she had embryos with Ryan. And suddenly every weird pause about children, every deflection, every tight smile, when people joked about future babies, rearranged itself into a pattern I should have seen earlier. I printed the invoice before I could talk myself out of it. Then I checked the downloads folder and found more. An email confirming a consultation on March 3rd, a billing notice, a scan lab report with Elise's name on it, and words I only half understood. AMH low, diminished reserve, urgent follow-up recommended. This was no longer about whether she missed her ex. This was about the fact that the woman I was marrying had a secret future stored in liquid nitrogen with another man, and she was trying to meet him before walking down the aisle. Then Nora called, and I answered with my voice already sounding like someone else's. Nora came over within 20 minutes, still in leggings and a zip-up hoodie, hair half braided like she'd left her apartment mid-motion. I spread the papers across the kitchen table. She read them in silence, lips parting a little more with each page. Okay, she said finally. This is bad. That's your clinical assessment. It's my sister of the groom assessment. My clinical one is worse. I sat down across from her. Did she lie about not being able to have kids? Did she lie about him? Did she plan to tell me after the wedding? What is this? Nora didn't pretend to know. Instead, she pointed to the March 3rd consultation email and the invoice due date. This wasn't forgotten, she said. This is active. Elise's old iPad was still linked to our Wi-Fi because she used it for seating charts. I hated myself for checking it. I checked it anyway. Her email app wasn't synced, but her notes were. One folder was titled June. Inside were vendor numbers, hotel room assignments, and a note that simply read, Friday 11:30 Ryan. Need final answer. Cannot bring this into Saturday. If he refuses, tell Daniel. Nora read it over my shoulder and whispered, Jesus. There were older fragments too. March 5th, Dr. Feldman said natural chance very low. March 7th, donor? Surrogate? Tell D before deposits? March 18th, Ryan still has rights. Won't sign if I hide behind a wedding. My mouth went dry. I started retracing dates like it was an investigation instead of my life. The clinic consult had happened the same week. Elise came home from work and cried in the bathroom for an hour, then told me she was just overwhelmed. 2 weeks later, she'd shut down during dinner when my aunt asked whether we wanted kids right away. I texted Marcus and asked if he'd seen Elise yesterday. He responded almost immediately. Yes. Lobby around 11:30. She asked for a quiet table. She wasn't with a vendor. I assumed you knew. By afternoon, I'd found enough timestamps to know Elise had been in contact with Ryan since at least early March. Not romantic texts. Not "I miss you." Just messages with the flat, ugly intimacy of unfinished business. At 4:12, Ryan sent the message that changed everything. By then I knew what the secret was in broad strokes, even if I didn't yet know the ugliest part. Elise had gone to Lakeside in March and learned something serious enough to send her into silent panic. The lab report, after Nora Googled terms I couldn't focus long enough to read, pointed to severely diminished ovarian reserve. Not impossible, she said carefully, but not good. And the embryos with Ryan were still there. 4 of them. Real, legal, living possibilities in the cold. Not a memory. A door. I sat with that for a long time. I want to be fair here, because that matters. If Elise had told me in March, I would not have left her because her body was complicated. I loved her. We could have cried. We could have gone to specialists. We could have decided together what family meant. Adoption, donor eggs, a child-free life, whatever was honest. What I could not get past was that she had chosen secrecy first. Nora leaned against the sink and said the thing I was avoiding. Those embryos are not just medical history. They're leverage. I knew she was right. Ryan had rights. Elise had written that herself, which meant this wasn't only about fertility. It was about permission, consent, a future involving my marriage that apparently required her ex to sign something before she could walk down the aisle. At 6, Elise texted me, running late. Rehearsal packets with Marcus. Love you. The "love you" made me physically angry. Then I did something I'm still not proud of. I scrolled farther back through the synced notes. Most were fragments. Panic written as shorthand. But one stopped me cold. April 22nd. Could he love a child that isn't biologically his if he never knew? No. Horrible. Stop. If donor, maybe. If Ryan signs, maybe possible. I read it 3 times because my brain kept trying to edit it into something less monstrous. Nora took the iPad from my hand, read it once, and went pale. Daniel. We still didn't know exactly what Elise planned. We only knew the secret was no longer, I once loved my ex. It was that she had been privately sketching out a version of our future in which the truth about our children might begin with a lie. Then my phone lit up with a message from Ryan himself. Ryan's message was short. We need to talk. Not about getting back together. About what she is asking me to do. No greeting. No apology. I stared at it so long the screen dimmed. Nora read over my shoulder and said, "Either that's manipulation or that man is the only honest person in this mess." I didn't answer him right away. The rehearsal dinner was in 3 hours. My aunt was landing at John Glenn. My cousin had texted from the hotel asking where to drop welcome bags. Life kept insisting on logistics while my reality had split open. Elise came home before 5 in a white blouse and soft makeup, looking exactly like a woman in the final glow before her wedding. She kissed my cheek in the kitchen and asked, "Did Marcus send you the room assignments?" I looked at her and wondered how many versions of me she'd rehearsed speaking to. The trusting one, the suspicious one, the forgiving one she was probably counting on. "Not yet," I said. She smiled like she believed the lie because she needed to. Then she started arranging mini bottles of champagne for her bridesmaids, as if she hadn't spent months planning something that could have detonated our marriage before it started. At the rehearsal, every ordinary thing felt obscene. My mother cried when she saw the flowers. Nora squeezed my elbow during the walkthrough. Marcus, who clearly knew enough to keep his mouth shut, avoided meeting my eyes. Elise laughed with her cousins, then drifted toward me and laced her fingers through mine like intimacy could still be done on muscle memory. "You okay?" she whispered. "Are you?" I whispered back. She searched my face too long. "Daniel, your aunt's looking for you." I spent the rest of the evening collecting proof the way people collect sandbags before a flood. Screenshots of Ryan's text, photos of the invoice, the March lab report, the note about if Ryan signs. I emailed copies to myself and Nora because suddenly I didn't trust anything to remain where I left it. And still, beneath all that anger, one humiliating hope stayed alive. Maybe there was an explanation awful enough to justify the secrecy, but clean enough to save us. Then Elise lifted her glass and almost confessed in front of everyone. Elise tapped her glass with a fork and smiled at 30 people who loved us enough to fly in on expensive tickets and bad timing. I just want to say, she began, voice already wavering, that this week has reminded me how lucky I am to be loved through the parts of myself that aren't simple. Elise looked at me, and for 1 second I saw a woman on the edge of confession. Not because she suddenly found courage, but because she was tired from carrying the lie. Then she smiled through wet eyes and pivoted. To Daniel, she said, who makes everything feel safe. Glasses lifted. People cheered. I wanted to scream. After dinner, she found me alone by the service hallway outside the ballroom. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. I could have ended it there. I could have pulled out the invoice, the notes, the texts, and let the whole fake glow of the evening die on contact. Instead, I gave her one last chance to tell me without being cornered. Is there anything about children, or Ryan, or your health that you have not told me? The blood drained from her face so fast, it was almost visible. She whispered, Did you go through my things? That's your first question? Tears filled her eyes instantly. Daniel, please. Answer me. She looked toward the ballroom doors, where our families were still laughing over coffee and cheesecake. Not here. Then where? In church? During vows? She pressed both hands to her mouth, then dropped them. I was going to tell you. When? She didn't answer. When? I asked again. After the wedding, she said, so softly I almost missed it. That felt like being hit with cold water. Not because it was new information. Because hearing her admit the timing made it real. Why after? Because I was afraid, she said. Because I didn't know if one terrifying truth would make you walk away from everything else. Because I needed to sort it out first. I almost caved right there. She looked wrecked. Small. Human. Sometimes the person breaking you is still the person your body wants to protect. Then Nora said 6 words that stopped me from marrying a lie. Nora stopped beside me, glanced once at Elise, and said, Do not confuse sympathy with truth. Elise flinched like she'd been slapped. I wish I could say I handled the next hour with clean dignity. I didn't. I moved like a man trying not to explode in public. I helped my uncle find his room key. I thanked guests for coming. I smiled for photos while my fiancée hovered at the edge of every room, pale and watchful, waiting for me either to forgive her or detonate everything. Around 10:15, I finally texted Ryan. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., Hotel Cafe. You, me, Elise. No games. He replied in less than a minute. I'll be there. She won't want me to say it in front of you. That was answer enough. I told Marcus I needed the private conference room off the lobby in the morning before hair and makeup took over the floor. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded once and said, 8 is fine. I'll keep it off the schedule. Back in our room, Elise was sitting on the edge of the bed in her robe, wiping off mascara with a washcloth already stained gray. When I walked in, she looked at me the way people look at hospital doors. Can we talk now? She asked. We're talking tomorrow morning. Her hand stopped midair. What does that mean? It means Ryan will be there. Every bit of color left her face. No. Yes. No. Daniel, you cannot do that. I laughed once. Cannot. She stood up. This is not your decision. Actually, it became my decision when you made my marriage contingent on a conversation with your ex. Her breathing got shallow. He doesn't get to tell our story. Our story, I said. I'm trying to find out if there even is one. She started crying again, but this time there was anger under it. You are humiliating me. That sentence hardened something in me for good. I slept maybe an hour. At 7:40, Nora met me in the hotel lobby with coffees and the look of someone ready to tackle a casket if necessary. Marcus unlocked the small conference room, drew the blinds halfway, and left a pitcher of water on the table. At 7:58, Ryan walked in, and his first sentence blew the last clean lie apart. Ryan looked nothing like the thread I had built in my head. He was taller than me, thinner than I expected, with tired eyes and the kind of face that probably read as charming until life sanded it down. He didn't swagger. He looked like a man who had not slept either. Elise came in and stopped dead when she saw Nora there too. You brought an audience? She asked me. No, Nora said. You did. Ryan stayed standing. I'm not here because I want her back. I'm here because she asked me to help her lie to you. The room went silent. The air vent. Ice settling in coffee cups. Elise's ring hitting the table when she braced herself on it. Explain, I said. Ryan took out his phone, opened an email thread, and slid it across the table. The subject line was from April, embryo disposition options. One message from the clinic counselor spelled it out plainly. Both parties must consent to transfer, donation, destruction, or future use. I told her I would sign for destruction if that's what she wanted, Ryan said, or donation to research. What I would not sign was any plan where you didn't know those embryos existed. Elise whispered, Ryan, stop. He didn't. She asked if there was a way the embryos could be transferred later under donor language so your husband wouldn't know they were mine. I looked at Elise. She started shaking her head before I spoke. It wasn't like that. Ryan's face hardened. You asked twice. April 22nd and May 9th. He pulled up screenshots. Dates. Timestamps. Her words, not his. If he never knows, it becomes our marriage, not my past. Would you sign if Daniel thought it was anonymous donor material? I just need options before the wedding. I felt something in my chest go stop. Elise started crying. I wasn't trying to trap you. I was terrified. The doctor said my chances were collapsing. You want kids. I thought if I lost you and that chance at motherhood, I would drown. I finally understood the note. Could he love a child that isn't biologically his if he never knew? Not a hypothetical. A plan, Ryan said quietly. I told her if she married you before telling you, I'd tell you myself. That was when I understood what her goodbye had really been for. I don't remember standing up, but I remember the chair scraping back hard enough to echo. Elise reached for me. Daniel, please don't walk out like this. Like what? I asked. Informed. That made Ryan look away. She started talking fast then, as if speed could rescue meaning. She said she never went through with anything. She said panic had made her think in horrible directions she hated herself for. She said she was going to tell me after the wedding because she wanted one last day where I looked at her the same. She said she loved me, and maybe some of it was even true. But truth after entrapment stops feeling like honesty. It feels like damage control. I took off my ring and set it on the table. Not thrown. Not dramatic. Just placed there between the coffee cups and printed lies. Elise made a sound I will probably hear in my head for the rest of my life. By 8:30, the wedding was not officially canceled, but it was dying in stages. I told Marcus there would be no ceremony until further notice. He nodded once, went into full professional triage, and started making quiet calls. Nora told our mother before I had to. My mother cried, then got angry, then cried harder when I showed her the screenshots. Elise's mother called me cruel for abandoning her daughter during a medical crisis. My uncle said lying about paternity before marriage wasn't a crisis, it was a character reference. Friends split the way people always do when truth is ugly and motive is complicated. Some said Elise was desperate and scared, which was true. Some said fear doesn't excuse building a marriage on false consent, which was also true. Ryan left after giving me the screenshots and saying, I'm sorry this is how you learned. The practical fallout hit fast. We lost the florist deposit. Half the catering money was gone. My principal called because a parent had seen a relative posting cryptic nonsense online and wanted to check in. By noon, I had packed a bag and checked into the hotel room Nora had moved me to because she refused to let me go back to the apartment alone. Around 2, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Elise was holding the confession she should have mailed. The letter was 4 pages long, handwritten on the creamy stationery she had bought for our vows. I almost didn't let her in. Nora, who was in the room with me because she didn't trust heartbreak not to make me stupid, moved toward the door like a bouncer. But Elise looked so wrecked that cruelty would have been easy, and I didn't want easy. I wanted final. So I let her speak. She told me the full version then. At 26, before she left Ryan, she had frozen embryos with him because she was about to start treatment for severe endometriosis and possible ovarian failure. Back then they still thought they were building a life together. After the breakup, she never used them, never destroyed them, never wanted to think about them. Then March happened. The doctor told her her reserve had crashed harder than expected. Maybe she could still conceive. Maybe not. I should have told you that day, she said. Instead I panicked and started thinking in corners. That was probably the truest sentence she said all weekend. She admitted she had asked Ryan whether he would sign over his rights and let the embryos be described as donor embryos later if she needed them. She swore she never started treatment, never signed transfer paperwork, never meant to go through with deception once the panic passed. But she also admitted she kept postponing the truth because every deposit we paid made confession more expensive. I asked the question that mattered most. If Ryan had agreed, would you have told me before the wedding? She cried harder, which was answer enough. There was no screaming left in me by then, just grief with edges. I do believe you love me, I said. That's what makes this worse. You loved me and still decided I was someone you could manage instead of trust. She covered her face. I told her the wedding was over. Not postponed. Over. I would cover my half of every non-refundable cost because I refused to let money keep us tied together. We could deal with the apartment through email only. No surprise visits. No midnight pleas. No using Nora as a back channel. When she reached the door, she turned back and asked the question I had been dreading most. Is there any version of this where you ever forgive me? My answer was honest, which was the only thing I had left to give her. I might forgive you someday, I said, but I will never trust the version of love you offered me. She nodded like she already knew that was the verdict. Then she left, carrying the vow paper and the future we were supposed to walk into together. The months after were quieter than people think heartbreak is. Not cinematic. Administrative. Canceling registry shipments. Calling the venue accountant. Meeting with a therapist because I couldn't stop replaying the moment in the hotel conference room when the whole architecture of my future changed shape. Going to work and pretending I wasn't newly allergic to the phrase family planning. Some days I was furious at Elise. Some days I missed her so badly I hated myself for it. We sold the apartment furniture we'd picked together. I moved into a smaller place across town with creaky floors and a window that looked onto an ugly parking lot. Nora checked on me without smothering me. My mother stopped asking whether there was any chance to fix it after I showed her the April screenshots again. Marcus sent me the portion of the catering refund he managed to salvage, along with a note that said, "You did the hard thing before it got harder." He was right. That's what I would tell anyone listening who is standing where I stood. The lie is not always the affair people expect. Sometimes the betrayal is more intimate than sex. Sometimes it's someone deciding they know what truth you can survive, then arranging your choices around their fear. Closure is not a moral pass. Panic is not permission. Being afraid of losing someone is not the same thing as having the right to quietly redesign their future. About 6 months later, I saw Elise once in a pharmacy aisle. No screaming, no movie scene. Just two people who had once planned forever, now standing between cough drops and prenatal vitamins like strangers with excellent reasons. We nodded. That was enough.